the caste bill that split California's Hindu community. On October 7th, 2023, California's Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill that sought to explicitly outlaw caste based discrimination, a topic that gained traction following events like Caste Con and the legal case surrounding Cisco Systems in California. If passed, California would have been the pioneer US state to enact such legislation, especially considering institutions like Brandeis University and the California State University system have already incorporated caste into their anti discrimination policies. The bill's intent was to protect individuals, especially Dalits, from bias in housing, education, and the tech sector. Newsom defended his decision, referencing existing provisions in California's laws that cover discrimination on grounds such as sex, race, religion, and more, deeming the bill quote unquote unnecessary. The debate over caste discrimination and its implications, including concerns about inadvertently reinforcing caste discriminate distinctions or further stigmatizing the U.S. Hindu community, has deeply divided the Indian American community. Many, including key voices at events like Caste Con and representatives from Hindu organizations, express apprehensions about potential biases against Hindus and people of Indian descent due to such legislation. So, this is going to be controversial amongst our audience.
Mm.
This is going to be controversial amongst our audience. So, Armin, we have previously talked about how there were these this proposed legislation in California. We talked about how it was proposed and its status as it moved through the House, and also the high degree of threats that the state assembly is she a senator or state assembly member? I don't know. Aisha Wahab is the legislator who introduced this legislation, and she received an insane amount of threats for doing so. So we've talked about all this, and so the conclusion is that it actually passed through the state assembly, and then when it reached the governor's desk, the governor refused to sign it, and he vetoed it. And I thought this was worth discussing. And I don't know. Do you have any initial reactions to this? Because I have some thoughts.
So wait, has this been? So this is going into what is the? Is this going to get passed? Do you
No,
think?
it's
Like,
dead.
is this going to be?
It's
It's
dead.
dead. Okay, okay. Because I
It
was
passed
away, I
the
didn't
state
see.
assembly, which means that it passed through all the bodies of government that, like, they all, well, not all bodies, but the relevant
Mhm.
bodies approved
So
it. And then
yeah.
when it was time for the governor to sign it into law,
So
he
yeah.
vetoed it.
So he says because discrimination based on caste is already prohibited under these existing categories, this bill is unnecessary. Unnecessary. Mm, I mean, isn't the point of a bill like that to put higher attention and emphasis on the discrimination, not even if it is already covered by another law? Isn't that the whole point? Like, that's not enough reason to. What do you think?
Well, my understanding, and I don't even know if this is what the activists fighting for this would say, but
Mhm.
again, this is me, is that it's like to actually make sure that people know that this is covered, right?
Mm.
In a legal setting. Um and I have to be completely honest, as I've learned more about this, my opinion has started
Mhm.
to change.
Mhm.
And this is partially because, especially with the case of two of the Cisco employees that have been accused of caste discrimination, that case against Cisco was dropped due to lack of evidence. And part of what I think is a very a legitimate concern of the plaintiff, or excuse me, the defendant in that case, one of the defendants who was accused of caste discrimination took great um issue with the fact that in the case levied against him by the CRD, which is the relevant body, I can't remember what it stands for in California, that he was repeatedly described in the lawsuit as being a Hindu. or an upper caste Hindu. And he's like, I'm not actually a Hindu. Like, I'm non-religious. I'm non-religious. Why are you asserting that I'm a Hindu? And I actually think that, and that doesn't mean that you're just because you're non-religious that you cannot perpetuate caste discrimination. Of course you can. But I do think it is concerning with that case in particular that the state is asserting the religious beliefs of one of its citizens. When they're asserting like this is not even what I believe. If someone did that to me, I'd be like, how dare you assert what my religious belief is? That's simply not true. And so with that particular case, I think that is concerning. And then when it comes to this legislation in general, um, I was reading a lot of articles about this on Religion News Network. And what I thought was really interesting was they had a whole article about how there was this Caste Con. And you would think that the Caste Con, which happened in Fremont, California, and NorCal fairly recently, it's Caste Con. Oh, it sounds like a bunch of people who are there to oppose caste discrimination. Caste Con was actually about people coming to have a conference about opposing anti caste discrimination policies. And several of the organizations that were involved in this Caste Con were actually and Bedcartite organizations.
Hmm.
And seeing some of the prominent activists against this legislations be Bahujan, be Dalit, or not even Dalit, or like part of prominent and Bedcarite organizations, and they
Hmm.
were voicing major concerns over this organization. I was like, that really caught my attention. That really caught my
Hmm.
attention. Um, and also the fact that there's been, well, actually, I'm not going to get into equality labs. Equality labs is always cited for Dalit based discrimination, and I think there are major flaws um, within their methodology um, of gathering information. Um, so what do you make of my thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it seems like it's not as simple as people make it sound to be. Like I think, like, look at this. Blue Rain is saying no true Ambedkarite organization would oppose anti-discrimination bill. I mean, no, that's not true. If it's done poorly, if it's not helping, like this, I think this is a very simplistic view. I think, like, obviously Susanna cares about being anti-discrimination.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
yeah, obviously, like, it seems like she's done her research. Even if you disagree with her, you could still disagree with the way something is being executed, over its details. Like, you could be against, for example, racism, or being anti, I don't know, you could be pro peace and look at a form of a legislation that is trying to promote peace, and you think that it's being done poorly, or it's not being, it's going to do more harm than good, and be against it even though you are still for peace. Like, I don't understand why people think that just because something has a label on it that a claims to be able to do good, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to do good. Like, that's a very I think
Mhm.
simplistic analysis. And I think, like, even if you're wrong, Susie, I think that you did your best to go and look at the details, and the fact that you have changed your opinions about this, it shows that you're trying to be honest and transparent about how you're thinking about this. So I
Yeah,
think, like,
I
you're
haven't even come to
yeah.
a conclusion. I haven't even come to a solid opinion. I'm just saying that I've
Mm,
learned more and now I have more questions. It really is that simple. I'm not making any prescriptions or dictates at this time. I'm just like, there are things that I've learned now that have caused me to have more questions. I'm not as certain as I was before, and that's normal.
right. Yeah.
And I have no shame in doing that. Guys, I'm actually trying to like model behavior that I think more people should have. I'm like, you know what? I'm less certain about a position I had before. That's okay. And also,
Yeah.
especially certain organizations like Equality Labs are always talking about caste equity. That always raises major red flags for me because equity is about equality of outcome. and there is no way to ensure a quality of outcome that isn't authoritarian. So but that's just me and my personal principles and convictions that that word raises red flags for me. But that's just me.
Mm. No, I think it's very good. That's very good. That we're not being certain about something. It's a good sign usually.
And you know what?
Um.
What I thought was really interesting,
Yeah.
this is my last thought about these many articles I read about this, is that both sides, no matter what side you're on in this issue, are talking about how this is an unprecedented level of uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like political energy from the Indian American or Hindu American community. And I
Mm,
thought that was really interesting. Basically, this is a tide shift in the way that they organize, and in a way I thought it was really cool to see. It's like, because this is what my country is about. They want to get active, they want to get activated about something, and we've seen them get organized in a way that they previously have never organized before. And both sides, no matter if they were successful or not, saw that as a win. So I thought that was cool. Um there were a few Topher is saying Susanna is a true agnostic in the best and most complete sense of the term. Well, thank you. I try to be. I'm not always, but when I catch myself feeling extra certain about something, that's actually a red flag for me. When I feel myself being like so certain and brittle in my opinion, to me, I actually stop and I'm like, you need to take a step
yeah,
back.
that's true. That's true.
Other
I've
people
seen
see
her
that as
even
like, I
behind.
know I'm right. I see that as a warning.
No, no, but that guys, that's true. Like even behind the scene when we're not doing a show, sometimes Susanna comes and she's very, very certain about something, and then later on she comes back and she wonders about, she even in our private talk, I completely see that. That's pretty true. That's a pretty accurate description.
I try.
Um, yeah.
Um,
All right,
we
so
got a
we
comment,
have.
Iona saying, why is it controversial among atheist or public audience? Well, because we have a significant amount of our audience that is Indian or Indian ancestry, and this is a very heated discussion. This is a very heated discussion on both sides of the issue. Um, And I mean, we have people, that are going to think that I'm now like anti-Dalit or something or for caste hierarchy because I'm like, I'm not sure about this. And then there are going to be people who are like, you want to destroy Hindu Americans, you bigot. There's no way to win when it comes to talking about this. So I'm like, we're taking
Right.
a risk. um, but
Yeah.
people who, are members of our audience and know us know that we, you know, are really trying to engage in these things in good faith, to the best of our ability. Gasian American gave us a $5 super chat. Thank you, Gasian. Saying, are there any Dalit CEOs? The CEO of Google and Adobe are Brahmins. Kamala Harris
Mm,
and Vivek Ramaswamy are Tamil Brahmins.
mm. That's a good question.
I don't know if there are any Dalit CEOs. Well, and also what kind of CEO? Are you just talking about like Fortune 500 companies? Like, what are we talking about? Like CEOs of a nonprofit? Sure. like, um, but I don't like the framing in general, no matter the identity group, that just because there is a lack of representation of a certain group in any given field, in any given profession, that by definition means that because there is not that representation there, the answer is racism or discrimination. Because I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think that's necessarily true. The, there are a lot of things that have to happen before people even come to the United States. Like this is more of a systemic question. Like just because there are
It,
not Dalit CEOs in the United States does not mean that that's because of explicit discrimination. It probably is because most Indians that come to the United States are of upper caste background because in India they have a higher ability to get the education There's I mean, it's just so it's like that legacy, right? They have a greater ability to come to the United States than other people. So then when there is representation among Indians at a high level, well, there's a larger population of Brahmins. So it's more likely that their representation is going to be Brahmin. But that doesn't necessarily mean
Okay.
that the discrimination is actually happening here in the US versus this is a legacy of who has the ability to come over to begin with. Am I making sense?
Yep. No, that's
Okay.
pretty good. But here's your answer. There are these three Dalit CEOs.
What do
I
we have
asked
here?
ChatGPT.
Bhagwan Gawai, which is a Dubai-based company. We have Kalpama Saroj, which is a serial entrepreneur of a Mumbai-based company, and Kavita Mononym, just Kavita, is the CEO of Chambal. Although okay, we don't know what kind of sector this is. Okay, but these are
Mm.
not US-based companies. I think that's what Gajan was getting at. Anyways,
Oh,
yeah, he was saying Fortune 500s.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
So my point when I'm
Um,
explaining this is not to say that dolls do not face discrimination even getting to this level, but it's like where is that happening and why?
but it is a good indicator um to see. It is a good indicator, though, isn't it? Like it's. I mean, it doesn't prove anything, but it does suggest something. No.
Well, yeah, sure, but I'm like, is this a systemic historical legacy that's giving rise to these results, or is it an active discrimination? I think those are two very different questions, and you can't conflate the two. And a lot of people are very
Yeah.
simple-minded in saying because we do not have representation of XYZ group and XYZ field,
Yeah.
that means that they
But
face discrimination. And I'm like, that's not necessarily true. It's like
yeah,
the
yeah,
racism of the gaps argument.
yeah, because the effects of discrimination is multi-generational. So even if you stop discrimination today, you are going to feel the effects of discrimination from yesterday, right? So
Yeah.
that could be the explanation. All right. So can we it smells like privilege. That's what I'm saying, basically. Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube? Blasphemous art ever? We do. And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.